Okay, so welcome everyone to another TCRM conversation. So this conversation is brought to you by the Cross River movement. And this conversation series has been holding since late last year, and it holds every fortnight, and we discuss issues of we consider to be of importance to Cross River State. So in this edition of the conversation, we will be talking about forest conservation and management in Cross River State. We are told that Cross River State is home to, I think, over 50% of Nigeria's remaining rainforest, and that it is also one of the great biodiversity hotspots. But the question is the rainforest indeed an asset to Cross River State? How can we manage it better to create economic value? So we need to balance things. On one hand, I suppose we need to preserve the forest, but on the other hand, the forest shouldn't be a liability to Cross River State. So these are some of the conversations that we're going to be having today. Welcome everyone who's joined us this evening. So I'm going to be introducing our panel, and this is not in any particular order. We have Mr. Odiga. He's a Nigerian educator, environmentalist, and activist, and he was awarded the Goldman Environmental Prize in 2003 for his efforts in the protection and preservation of the rainforest in Cross River State. He's also a former chairman of the Cross River Forestry Commission. So join me in welcoming him. We have also, I don't know if he's joined us yet, but we have Mr. Ode Oyama, who is a former state chairman of the Anti-Deforestation Task Force in Cross River State. And finally, the last but not the least, we have Tufam Emmanuel Tuyang, who is an environmentalist and has spent 28 years working in nature resource conservation. He holds an MSc in environmental science and has a PhD in VIEW in the same subject area. And he's passionate about natural resource conservation. So yeah, join me in welcoming these panelists to the conversation this evening. Before I kick things off, Chairman Odiga, I don't know if you can speak, so let's see if we can hear you now. Mr. Odiga, are you able to hear me? Okay, I suppose not. Okay, so let's start from the very basic. So, Mr. Ntuyang, why should we be concerned about the rainforest and the forest in Cross River State in general?
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Saul, for this. Of course, we know that as a people, our forest is our greatest resource base. You know that it is our forest that has given us a place in the global map. Our recognition as a people is intricately linked with our forest. Of course, we are proudly the custodians of one of the remaining tropical rainforests in the world. And so for us, this is an important asset, and we do everything that is necessary to protect it. That is why for us, the things that are going on in the forest in Cross River State are a major setback of our state in terms of development. We do know what the forest represents. We know for sure that the benefits that accrue from preserving and protecting our rainforests are enormous. Most of them, the ecological services it provides. Of course, we know the world is currently challenged by environmental improvidence. And of course, you know that climate change is real, and our forests playing a key role in combating the issues of climate change. Of course, we know too that our forest bears very great value in terms of the life forms called the biodiversity. We pride ourselves as the richest part of Nigeria's biodiversity. So for so many reasons, we have very good cause to protect our forests.
Okay, Mr. Tuyan, thanks very much. You know, I would play maybe the devil's advocate and say, okay, so amidst all the challenges that you know, Nigerians are facing, and maybe particularly people in Cross River State, why should we bother about the forest? Why should we be concerned at all? You know, we have issues around power. We understand that in Cross River State for the last 2 weeks, there hasn't been any power supply. We know that there are challenges around you know, unemployment. There are more pressing things. So, you know, I guess the question again would be why should people be concerned, really? And you know, I mean, we've got quite a number of people on this conversation here today, which I guess shows that people are interested in this subject. But maybe if you can throw a bit more light on that question.
Well, I think we should know that the quality of life is intricately linked with the quality of the environment. If you have an environment as ours, you know, we take for granted the quality of air we breathe. We take for granted even the quality of the water we drink, and all of those things that attend preservation and conservation of our natural habitat. Our lives, you see in Cross River, most of the things other people go through, in terms of diseases and other forms of challenges, are relatively low in Cross River. That is because of the account of the quality of air we breathe, number one. Number two is that, of course, they know the forest serves as watershed. Major rivers in Cross River State are from the forest. Now, if you destroy the forest in Cross River State, like the Cross River and other water bodies are gone, and these are huge. That will cause huge challenge to humanity. Of course, you know that Cross River State is also known for agriculture. The quality of our forest also affects food production, and it is important that we preserve and conserve our forests to ensure that our crop yields very well, to sustain us, and of course like as I said, mentioned, the effect our forest serves as a carbon sink. You know, we are in the South, and the narrative in the South is environmental degradation, all of the stories that has to do with oil spillage, gas flaring, and all of that. Our forest serves as a carbon sink. Our forest is the carbon trap that most of the gas flaring and all the other unwholesome environmental, the green gas, you know, that are being emitted, the carbon that is being emitted is being trapped by our forest. So it is important that we conserve this forest. There's so many.
Okay. Yeah, Mr. Tuyan, thanks very much for that. Now, I'm aware, and maybe you may want to touch on this. So the organization or the parastatal that you work for has oversight of forest and, you know, other, you know, of forests across Nigeria generally. So I think the next question I'll be asking you is what is unique about the Cross River forest? And, you know, we know there's a rainforest, but what is it about, you know, the forest in Cross River State that's actually unique? Because we know that there's forests all across Nigeria.
Well, first and foremost, let me thank you. You know, I'm not speaking as a staff of the National Park. I'm speaking like as somebody from the forest bearing community, a major forest community in Crossriverians. So it's my understanding that my position here, as it affects me as a community person. But let me mention here that of all the ecosystems in the world, the rainforest is the richest in terms of biodiversity. What that simply means is the preponderance of occurrence of biological forms is higher in the rainforest than any other ecosystem. So the rainforest is an asset in terms of biodiversity. So the life forms, I'll give you an example. The urban corridor, the area I come from, is today the richest part of this country in terms of the plants and animal species. At the moment, it's been recorded about 568 different plant species. 1,556 plant species are found in that area. You don't find that anywhere in this country. So there are no ecosystems that have that preponderance of life. And then, of course, the faunal component of the rainforest is richer again than any other one. If you look at Nigeria, the rainforest has so receded either by the effect of development and areas that used to have rainforest, particularly the southwest and south, and the southeast. The areas are all being used for other purposes. What we have here is an emerald rainforest, so treasurable. And so we have to preserve it, because you won't find a rainforest anywhere else in Nigeria, except a patch in Edo State, a small patch which is a common national park, and then the rest is almost the rest is here. I'm talking about the tropical rainforest.
Okay, thanks very much. I think I will throw the next question at Mr. Odiga. I don't know if his audio is working now, but so is the rainforest or the forest generally in Cross River State being threatened? And if that is the case, what are those threats? It appears like we still have issues with his audio, Mr. Tuyang.
Yes.
Yeah, I think I may have to come back to you with this question, and I hope this isn't just the conversation between.
Was the question directed at me?
No, it was not. But our other panelists appears to be having issues with his audio, so I think I'm going to have to come back to you. But before I do that, let me mention to everyone who's on the call that if you would like to contribute to this conversation, if you have a question or a comment you would like to make, just use the icon to indicate. I think it's the reactions icon. So just use a hand. So you should see that there on my own profile. Okay, so just use that icon to indicate that you would like to make a comment or ask a question, and would let you do that. Okay. All right, Mr. Tuyang. So the question is the forest in Cross River under threat? You touched on it a little bit, so I suppose your answer to that question will be yes. If it is yes, then maybe you might want to speak about what some of those threats are to the forest in Cross River State.
Well, I would like to say that it is given that our forest is under serious threat, not just threat, because if you look at the autonomous state, the last, if you want me to compare the forest space in the state, our state, Cross River, has a total land size of 20,156 square kilometers. And if you look at that in the last 20 years, you will realize that the forest has shrunk so so serious and so significant that perhaps outside the national park, we just have some patches of forest still left. And because the communities and forest merchants or timber merchants have dealt very, very devastating blow in our forest. And this is very sad. But most saddening is the fact that this is done with the connivance of some state actors. Our forest is indeed still under serious threat.
Okay, I think it will be good to get some context here, because I know we have 2 national parks in Cross River. So there's the urban, or there is a 1 national park and 2 divisions. Maybe you throw a bit more light on that. There's the urban division of the national park that extends into Cameroons to the east, and then there's the Okwanga, which is up in the north. So when we talk about these threats to the forest in Cross River, are we talking about threats to the forest in those national parks, or are we talking about threats outside of those parks as well?
Well, first and foremost, the forest in Cross River is under threat. The areas that are most vulnerable are the areas outside the national park. That is not to say that the national park is also not affected in both divisions. But I think that given the activities of park management, there is considerable protection. Of course, you know that the logistics of protecting such a wide expanse of land, 4,000 square kilometers of tropical rainforest with very difficult terrain, it's not easy. You see occasionally people coming to the national park to harvest timber, but the situation is not as bad as outside the national park. In fact, the national park is, for now, the last hope of protecting our forest. The forest reserve in the state and the other areas, even community forests, are gone. So a lot is done to the urban division is a little bit better than Congo. Maybe because of the kind of traffic that moves from there to the eastern states, Ebonyi and all of that. That area is under severe attack. The community forest there and the park is under attack. However, as I said earlier, the park is relatively safe, relatively, but the community forest is under severe attack.
Okay, let me, allow me to play maybe the devil's advocate here. So we have the national parks, which are, I guess, areas, large areas that are protected by, legislation and what have you. And then we have sections outside of those national parks. So my question then would be, why shouldn't we utilize as effectively as we want to, which includes the felling of trees or whatever it is, for the areas that are outside of the national park? Okay, so, should we just take pride in being surrounded by forests when we know that there's the national parks, which are supposed to be preserved, and everything outside of the national park, can we not utilize economically for the benefit of, the people of Cross River State and the economy of our state?
Well, I think that it is important to know that development also require the use of the forests. But what we are saying here is the wise use. Conservation is the wise use of, the forest. It's not in the manner that's being done. I am sure that the Forestry Commission I know that there is moratorium on logging, but before the moratorium, I'm sure they do selective logging. So and that is outside the national park, either in the community forest or other areas, but outside the national park. But what is going on is not selective log. They're logging even with the very small timber that is supposed not to have logged. They're doing very unsustainably. And these are practices that does not help, the forest management in the state. I'm sure there are forest laws in the state. I don't know to what extent those laws have been, kept, but from every indication, it's the poor management of the forest estate in the state.
Okay, thanks very much, Mr. Ntuyang. Mr. Odiga, I don't know if you can hear me now. Would love to bring you into this conversation. Okay, still not, unfortunately. So please, if there's anyone here, if you have any ideas, you have any thoughts that you'd like to share on the conversation, use the icon to indicate, and we'll give you the opportunity to speak. So Mr. Ntuyang, we'll just carry on, and thankfully, I think you're someone who's very knowledgeable in this area, so it's a great opportunity for us to glean from that knowledge and to put questions that may have been on our minds for quite a while. So we touched on threats to the rainforest in Cross River State. You've not mentioned anything about climate change. So to what extent will climate change be affecting the rainforest in Cross River State, or the forest in general, not just the rainforest?
Well, I did say the forest cover, provides that sink, where carbon is sequestrated. The sequestration of carbon is that process of trapping. It's a natural process. It's biological, it's physical, it's also chemical of trapping carbon, by the forest. That's forest sequestration. And so our forest serves as that. And because of that, certain, these dangerous gases that would have destroyed the ozone layer, and then causing greenhouse effects. Those greenhouse gases that will destroy that thin membrane of the ozone layer, and then causing excessive heat that would melt some icebergs, and then cause other environmental hazards to the world. Our rainforest has played a key role in ensuring that there isn't so much, you won't find so much drought in Cross River. You won't find a lot of other environmental challenges that many of these other countries are. That is because, okay, look at, for instance, erosion. Given the fact that our waters are the forest ensures that the soil nutrients or the soil is still intact, and ensures that the erosion that takes place in other places, those big gully erosions that you find particularly in eastern Nigeria and other places, don't occur here. And these are all part of the beauty of the resource of the advantages of having this forest intact. So we are in a way safe by the forces that are associated with climate change to a reasonable extent. I am not saying that we are totally protected, but the beauty of our forests has also helped in some measure to protect this area from the harsh realities of the climate change.
Okay, all right, thanks very much. We know that when the current administration came in, one of the governor's main projects was a superhighway. Now, we know that, the government actually carried out a lot of deforestation, as part of the initial phase of that project. How much do you know about this? And, do you have any idea if the deforestation went into the national park, or was it strictly outside of the national park? And do we have any idea of how many hectares or whatever of forests were affected by the superhighway project?
Well, you know that I speak for Nigeria. In this particular
Sorry, your audio has gone low, so we're not hearing you right now.
Okay. But so I speak for Nigeria National Parks.
Mm-hmm.
But in this particular meeting, I'm not speaking for the speak as a community.
I think you may need to bring your device closer to you because your audio isn't clear.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, it's better now.
Okay, sorry. I was saying that I'm not speaking for the National Park Service in this particular instance. It's not an official position, but I was lucky to be in Cross River and work in Cross River National Park when the issue of the superhighway generated a whole lot of heat. Part of the problem was that a certain portion of the superhighway had actually entered the Cross River National Park. So the Park Service engaged the state government on that, and the government actually did detour the road away from the park. That's the much I know. For deforestation, I'm not sure any part of the national park was forested at that time. I do not know what happened elsewhere, but I think that when we did complain to government, to the state government did move the road away from the national park.
Okay, all right. Okay, that's good to know. Even though we know there was quite a lot of deforestation that took place, but I guess it's a bit comforting to know that happened outside of the national park. Okay, Iman, we'll go now into maybe talking a bit about the economics, I guess, of the forest. Like you said earlier, you belong to a community that is directly, but not just you, of course, you and I are both members of a community that's directly involved in, affected by whatever happens in the rainforest in Cross River State. So maybe the next question I'd ask you is, to just paint a picture of how people living in communities, maybe in or around the national park, are affected on a day-to-day basis by the forest, and how do they live? What's the main means of livelihood, and how does that affect the forests? We've got a couple of people who I guess have questions or comments, and maybe after you've answered this question, we'll bring in Sikak. All right.
Well, of course, the national park is not the totality of the forest of this community. There is also the community forest, and we do not have control over the community forest. The committee use their forest the manner they deem fit. And whatever is found in the national park, because it is the same forest, is also found in the community forest. I also know that the national park also has provided some incentives in terms of allowing the communities to harvest what we call the non-forest timber products, under some guide, that helps. We are a conservation, the National Park is a conservation organization. We do not directly get involved in the
We're not hearing you anymore, please. Check your audio.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, now we can.
Okay, all right. I did say that the National Park Service or the national parks around here in Cross Rivers, where has not taken the totality of the forests of these communities. There is the national park, there's the community forests. The national park does not influence what happens in the community forests. A lot of activities go on. Some of the log, the farm, they hunt, they do a whole lot of things there. They give out some portions for agriculture. The national park has no hand in what happens there. The national park only protects areas that are designated as national park. The national park also allows community people to enter the park to harvest the non-forest timber products, but under our guide. And these products, like the ones, of course, the one they commonly call afang and all of those spices too, are allowed to be collected by the locals from the national park, but under some sustainable arrangements. So parks serve as avenues for visitation. Most visitors, when they come to the national park, they also stop by in communities and buy some souvenirs that are being created by the community people, buy food stuff from the community, and a whole lot of other activities from the community, thereby affecting in some way the economic lives of those communities. As a national park, we are not a ministry of environment, we are not a ministry of works, we are not a ministry of agriculture, we are not a ministry of education. We can only affect, or can only assist where we can. I mean, we have heard people say the national park has not given roads. I've heard people say not build schools and all of that. We do not take the role and responsibility of the ministries, of Ministry of Education, or Ministry of Works, or Ministry of Power. No, National Park is just a conservation agency. So I'm beginning to make me speak like coming from the National Park.
Well, I mean, that's you're deeply involved, so it's difficult to separate you from that. But yeah, thanks very much for that. There's a comment here. Someone says, when I was a child, we used to visit a tourist center in Oban and Kwa Falls. Are those places still operational? So this is touching on tourism. I was chatting earlier with the MD of the Cross River Tourism Bureau, and I was hoping that he would be on this conversation, but I'm not sure if he is. But I think this moves nicely into the next, I guess, phase of our conversation, which is, well, I guess still with the economy. To what extent are we harnessing all of these things that are supposed to be valuable, like the rich biodiversity, the unique rainforest, the species that are in those forests? To what extent are we harnessing those things, as tourism assets in Cross River State? Let me pause. Let's hold that question for now. Let me ask Sikak to unmute and ask his question or make a comment. Sikak, the floor is yours.
Yes, Issa, thank you very much. Everyone on the call. Yeah, thank you very much, Issa. Good evening, everyone on the call. Am I being heard, please? Am I communicating?
Yes, we can hear you. Good evening.
Yes, good evening. Yes, so whenever this topic biodiversity comes up, it breaks something new because in the course of my duty over time, I've come to realize that biodiversity seems to be the cheapest way out of even climate change challenges, and the current scenario that is plaguing the country, poverty, hunger, and all that put together. So, but the unique thing about Cross River State is that one of the major threats to tropical rainforests in other parts of the Niger Delta per se, call it the exploration and oil and gas exploration activities is minimal in Cross River State. So that leaves it back to the other major challenge, which is institutional weakness. Talking about absence of enabling biodiversity laws, and even when they exist, some of them may be obsolete. Even when the obsolete ones exist, the implementation is poor, monitoring is poor, and then all you have is unsustainable consumption patterns. What you have is the effect of poverty and hunger dragging people into, farming even right in the heart of the forest. So, but I am not very close to the Cross River forest per se. I've not really, done anything around there. But taking a cue from what has happened mostly around other parts of the Niger Delta, I feel that what might work, also based on some of the work that we have been able to do in some other places, might be what we call community-based forest management. If the national park is there, but the other parts of the forest are not part of the national parks, I guess the state government, should be able to take the bull by the horn and realize that both of their focus, as it were, is some some castles in the air thing, like what you just spoke about, the super highway. I wonder where that is taking us to. All right, so but I think looking back and seeing that the effect of government in terms of protecting the livelihoods of those forest dependent individuals or communities, that aspect is still lagging behind seriously. So if they can come up with some kind of community-based forest management laws, that will bring in the people, make them partners in this, aspects of forest protection, like we've done in some other place, I guess it will help the people to even protect those resources. We will still have rich biodiversity at the same time. They will still get things like the last speaker was talking about, the non-timber forest products, even the timber, the forest timber products can be sustainably harnessed. And when you have a succession plan, you can plan and then know that at this stage, these ones will be matured. You can harvest these ones, make use of them, and then while you keep replacing, time. So that's my contribution. I really feel if we get into that aspect in myself.
Okay, Nsika, thanks very much for that. Thank you. You made a good point about communities being involved in community-based forest management. I think Mr. Odiga's audio is connected now, so this would be a good time to bring him into the conversation.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, sir. So thanks very much for joining us. So I think I talked about community-based forest management, and I'm aware that a particular community in, I think it's Boki, is it the Ekuri community, was sort of heralded as a success story when it comes to community-based forest management. Do you want to maybe tell us a bit about what happened in that community, if you are aware, and maybe what lessons can be learned from that for other communities?
Yeah. So thank you very much for bringing me into this interesting conversation. I regret that it's been a technical hitch getting along with this conversation. But it is very interesting from what Nsika just said and your question. I think the summary of what we have in Cross River State is the lack of political will to continue with what was started. In 2008, the world gathered in Calabar, and then far-reaching decisions were taken as to how we need to conserve our rich biodiversity and the Nigeria's last tropical rainforest, particularly that is found in Crossriverians State, on the way forward to manage the forest for carbon sequestration. See how we can use that paradigm to manage the forest while we still have it, because it's a wasting asset that the country has. We have less than 10% of it left in Nigeria. And so a stage was set for us to do that. There's a program I know. His Excellency Governor Liali Moke led the team, led the state to assess resources to that. So there's a program on hand, the RED program, and it's going on involving, it was making quite some progress. But I don't think, in all honesty, that this present administration had any time or anything devoted, any consideration for the forest. Don't forget the superhighway, as we talked, somebody mentioned, was calculated to have taken up about 25% of the forest for a single project. That spoke volume, and it was a big fight to make sure that certain things were done. So in all honesty, there's been the lack of political will, first and foremost, to do that. And the stakeholders were willing, communities were willing in Boki. We worked extensively with them. They took part in every aspect of it. The structures were put in place, like a technical committee to drive the process, that about now, there was external support to come in, because forest protection is not a child's play. It has a lot of budgetary implications. And it's like a kind of asset where you invest not to reap immediately, but later on. But all those things were jettisoned. I think moving forward is to go back and reassure the communities. Thank God all of you are interested, many people are interested, but the key actors as at now are the people, the forest-dependent communities who live by the forest resources. So we definitely have to work with them to ensure protection. They are willing. There was a move in Boki. I was involved in that in a lot of communities. They are willing to do that. But the absence of the political will to put the structures in place to work is where we have now. So I think moving forward is to see how can we empower these communities and present some hope for them so that they will collaborate and continue to keep hope alive moving forward.
Why do you think there's lack of political will, on the part of the current administration? Is it they just don't see it as a priority? What would you attribute the lack of political will to?
Yes, lack of political will means, for instance, you support the agency in place to carry out a statutory function. But as we speak, even the provision of the logistics and stuff like that are not there. A department that has not received the basic thing like impress to keep the thing functional. If you complain about a thing, the people are not there. We have forest charges, forest offices that are not functional. For them to be, if there's a political will, those structures will work. There's a connection in place. Even some things that were done, for instance, there was a lab, a carbon lab that was set up, yours truly, and vehicles and things like that put in place. Those things are grounded. So that speaks volume that there is absence of political will or commitment to protection or management of the forest.
Okay, so please just explain to us, you mentioned the RED program, and I was somewhat familiar with that program during the administration of His Excellency Senator Imoke. Shed a bit more light on the RED program. What were the objectives? Who were the funding partners for that program? And what were the, I guess, goals and expectations from it?
Yes, RED program for short is reduce emissions from deforestation and forest degradation. It's a RED Plus program, and other things, conservation is involved, and what have you. It is a UN program run by the 3 agencies of United Nations, namely UNDP, UNEP, United Nations Environment Program, and FAO, Food and Agriculture Organization. We're able to assess as much as $10 million to put the structures in place during a phase, because it's divided into phases. The readiness phase, where the strategy and the other instruments, documentation like participatory governance assessment.
Hello, sir. Okay. Yes. Your video froze. Your video and audio froze for a few seconds. But carry on, please.
Okay. Now
it's frozen again.
The various stakeholders was put in place. All that was needed is to continue working on getting to the next phase and relate with this.
Okay, I think we'll come back to you, sir. We'll come back to you.
Yes.
Yes, sir. Sorry, your connectivity might be a bit poor. So we'll come back to you anyway.
Okay.
David Etim.
Okay.
I'm going to unmute you. If you have a question or a comment you'd like to make, please go ahead.
Yes, I do have a comment. My name is David Etim, like Esau has said. I'm the Deputy President of the Calabar Chamber of Commerce. Now, my comment is strictly in the area of for sustainability. Now, Mr. Odinga has talked about the UN support that came in to forest sustainability, of our forest reserves. Now, in the world today, donor fatigue is a critical issue. And I look to see a presentation, a articulation of sustainable funding for our forest reserves, which is that the funding will not be dependent on donors, but will be built in such a way. I mean, today, let's be very honest to ourselves. The government of Nigeria is financially insolvent. That is a fact. Okay? So depending on government to protect such resources is definitely unsustainable. Also, depending on donors to protect such resources is also unsustainable. So we need to be able to design a sustainable funding structure that will protect our reserves, hopefully bring us to a point of carbon neutrality sometime down the line. I was looking at a document recently that says Nigeria needs $260 billion to get to carbon neutrality. Okay, now that funding can definitely not be donor money, and it can definitely not be from our government because our government doesn't have it. So we need to be able to design sustainable structures that will enable us project and work towards sustainability of our forest reserves using a sustainable funding model, not donor funds and not government funds, because government, like I said, I mean, this is a known fact. Even the World Bank has recently said it. We are insolvent. Thank you very much. Okay. I would like Mr. Odinga to address me on this because he's an authority in this area. Okay. He's an authority in this area. Thank you.
David, thank you. Yes, I will hand that over to Mr. Odinga, but I may come back to you, David, to hear what your own ideas might be around such a financial model. Over to you.
Gladly so. Gladly so.
Yeah. Thank you very much for David for that. You see, the REC program was actually getting to that phase. You know, there's nobody who will come there. The people themselves, and that's why it involved the stakeholders. We're getting to a place where our rich resources we can harvest and harness that and use that to protect the forest. For instance, forest is not just all about timber exploitation, which is a unfortunate reality as at now. But the non-timber forest products are far richer. And two, managing the forest for carbon credit is a way, it's like eating your cake and still having it. So we're inching towards where we're supposed to have the RED program is supposed to anchor on that. But you see, it's like taking a step, 2 steps forward, 1 step forward and 2 steps backward. That is what simply happened to us. And we need to recover from that and come up with that model that everybody is clamoring for. Hopefully that in the next dispensation, we'll be able to sit down and have a dialogue and come up with what is feasible and what is acceptable. Definitely, we cannot expect people to be giving us money to continue to spoil. We need the forest to even talk about the sustainability that we're talking about. So I agree with you. Those are those models that we need to have a conversation as a people, as stakeholders, as we had before, to discuss these issues. Government cannot give us all that we require at this point in time in terms of the funding. What is required is the political will for the dialogue to continue, to bring stakeholders together for us to talk.
Okay, Mr. Odiga, thanks very much. I'm going to, again, I guess, play the devil's advocate on this. So we have many programs like the RED program that are, giving us money to maintain our forests. Now, yeah, that's okay, that's fine, but why can't we use this forest? So now I'm not talking about forests within the national park, but I'm just talking about maybe the community forest, right? Why can't we clear this forest, use whether it's a wood or whatever it is, to build more houses and build cities in these places where these forests are? So it's almost as if, maybe a program like the RED program is paying Nigeria or Cross River State to remain undeveloped, in quotes. So keep that whole beauty, that biodiversity, that ecosystem, all of that stuff, at the expense of building cities and enlarging, and increasing development. What's your view on that?
We need forests. Forests is not a hindrance to development. We need forests for survival. Beyond what we get from the forest as timber, climate regulation, you can now see the weather situation in Cross River State has tremendously changed. And this is not unconnected with the way our forest is being harvested without proper regulation. So even the water, all these things, that there are a lot of numerous things, ecosystem services that we receive from the forest. So I think clearly, even the medication, numerous things. So I think that we can still harness the forest. Like I said, RED is supposed to eat your cake and still have it. We can use those resources from the forest. As at now, because of the demand to have forests, the world is talking about ecosystem restoration. We are in the decade because a lot of things have gone back. 2021 to 2030 is the decade for ecosystem restoration. So clear felling to build cities is not synonymous with development as we talk as at now. So what we're supposed to do is that coming together, we can still bring a lot of development. We can still harvest. A typical thing is that the way we've been having resources, I want to just mention a few things. Do you know a place like Cross River State or Nigeria, AFAM, that we are all familiar with, that we import AFAM into Nigeria from Cameroon and the neighboring countries. We import that. So we have been losing a lot of biodiversity. So what we're supposed to do principally is to keep our biodiversity and see how to multiply it and then build on to that. And then we need to also embrace new model for development. For instance, move away from the linear economy to circular economy, which has to do with reusing resources. You know, you don't keep going back then. The world is talking about zero tolerance for depletion of our natural capital. The forest is our natural capital. We should not deplete it. It is to our disadvantage to deplete it at this point in time. We should see how to enhance it and use it to build a strong economy that is safe for both humans and for the environment. That's the model that is trending now.
Okay, all right, thank you. I'll ask one more question, and then I think Nsika has a comment or a question perhaps. And if there's anyone else on the conversation who would like to contribute, you have ideas, you have any questions to ask, please indicate, and we'll pull you in. Yes, so sir, you mentioned the lack of political will as being a hindrance to the effective management of our forests. Now we know that elections are around the corner, and come 2023, we'll have a new administration in place. If this is really important, how can we put it on the agenda? How can we make this a priority for the incoming administration? What practical steps can we take to achieve that?
Well, so thank you very much. I commend you first and foremost for this initiative that we begin the conversation. Let it be, let's continue to jog. Let's continue from here, we move on and tease the points that are coming out of here and take a step forward from this conversation and be able to see some points and present a common agenda to the incoming administration together, not just present something, let them get involved. I remember when we had the World Environment Summit, the governor, the sitting governor, there was in the summit. He didn't come there to open the summit and leave away. He took part in the conversation, in the tea break, everything, the resolutions, and he was involved in implementing the people's will. If that was allowed to sustain, I think we could have been talking a different thing. And he went to conferences and he was ready to converse with the people about now, and he was making contact with, okay, can we be supported through arrangement that will involve the private sector and what have you? As at now, the private sectors are not involved in forest management, and which is an unfortunate thing. So I think this will come out from a conversation with all the stakeholders, and then we'll be able to stick on and hold all parties accountable and will be responsible to moving forward. So that's what I will think. Let this conversation go on and let us move it a step further. And let the politicians be actively involved in the process that will resolve to say, this is what we want to do together with the communities. So that I think that will save us.
Okay, thanks very much. I think that is noted, and we'll reach out to you offline to see how we can drive that process.
Thank you.
Okay. Nsika, please, you have the floor. And just before Nsika takes the floor, if anyone has a question or a contribution to this conversation, please just indicate using the reactions icon in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, and we'll be happy to bring you into the conversation. I noticed some time ago, Professor Ekanem Wokoma, I believe, was on. If she's still here, it would be nice to maybe know something, because I know she's the professor of plant pathology, and may also be able to speak about the biodiversity element. But Nsika, please go on.
Great, thank you very much. So let me start with a little joke. I reside in Port Harcourt, and each time I travel out of Port Harcourt to my place, to Akwa Ibom, as soon as I cross Imo River Bridge into Akwa Ibom, I breathe a different air. That is because right from that time, right from that position into Akwa Ibom, we still have rich vegetation, which help us to clean the air. The black soot that we're crying about in River State is not also in Akwa Ibom. All right, but they are close. And of course, in environmental matters, wind dispersion, would have taken it that far. But the trees around there, the thick vegetation around there, help us to manage some of those. So what do I mean? Based on your last devil's advocate question, it will be best we allow the relics of those forests in Cross River State to remain. And like Mr. Dinga said, we need to even multiply it. We need to multiply it at all costs. Now, forest conservation, biodiversity conservation and preservation, so to speak, is never a one-party show. It is minimally a tripartite program. The public sector, the private sector, and then you call in the host, call it the communities. The moment we have that, including the NGOs and other, the moment we have that, that organization, a functional organization such as that, we will be able to start from the scratch. We look at all the, of course, you would want to carry out a SWOT analysis. You want to check what are the weaknesses, where are the strengths, where do we have the opportunities? And of course, you want to also carry out some needs assessment. You want to put everything on the table, and then we can chart a course forward. Like I mentioned earlier on, we started something somewhere, and of course, the reception at the beginning was very poor. But with the consensus that we had, together with the government and the NGOs and other parties, we're able to drive a thing. After the first year, we're able to make some strides, positive strides. After the second year, the other aspects of the program, we had two sections, call it North and South. The southern part was working effectively, but the northern part wasn't interested because they felt it wasn't going to work. So, but when they saw the southern part working, they were now the ones, coming up, now pleading that we should come back and assist them to do and get to where. And I tell you the truth, when we started with these guys, they were on 0 level. But by the time we pulled out, because at a certain point, being a corporate organization, at the time that we pulled out, these guys were, call it, near independent, and they were able to generate their own funds. They were able to keep the forest standing and all that put together. So this thing is not like the other speakers have said. It is not rocket science. The only thing is, when Mr. Odinga talked about political will, the thing is, I need to be blunt here because this is a forum where we should be able to speak the truth. I need to be blunt here. So a lot of our governors or people in government, they think, just like you mentioned, going to build, new cities, new Calabar, for instance, using Cross River because it's a Cross River State discussion, building a new Cross River in Calabar City, entail building, clearing forests, and she will tell you that there are basic ecosystem services provided by biodiversity, and we also have them in terms of interdependencies of different ecosystems that play all together. All these things we're talking about, including the climate change, flood, checking flood, climate change regulation, and all that put together. Even the other, the trends, in the soil, all that put together, all the interdependencies. You discover that if we knew what would happen, we would not have agreed that any of our forests be brought down. You see that governments go to forests to clear the forest, build airports. They go to forests, clear the forest, build highways. It is not necessary. We can sit down, plan our cities, plan our development, projects, and then we have our God-given resources protected and enhanced. Because as we speak, if what is remaining in Cross River State goes in the next 10 years, I tell you the truth.
Okay, Sika, thanks very much. Thank you.
The whole of the Niger Delta is opened up for now.
Okay, thanks very much, Sika. There's a question here which I think I will throw at Mr. Emmanuel Tuyang, having given him a very long break. So we'll come back to you now. The question is security a threat to the forest as per the ongoing invasion of forest around Nigeria by so-called bandits? So maybe this question, if I may rephrase it, is what's the impact? Do we have banditry in the Cross River forest, and what's the impact of this banditry, if it exists, on our forests?
Oh, well, let me apologize for the short break. I'm sure I had problems fixing network, but I'm happy I'm back. Well, to your question, I'm not aware of any insecurity in our forests. I'm not aware compared to what happens in other forest areas. I'm not aware that there are bandits in our forests. And I think that our forest reasonably is safe from all forms of criminalities, at least at the moment, except perhaps loggers who are themselves armed, hunters who are themselves armed, but organized crime, I'm not sure.
Okay, all right, thanks very much. Let me go back to Giga. So I know that you are on the side of perhaps the total preservation of the forest that we have. But what I'm curious to know is, of course, not all logging is illegal. So there's also legal logging. What does it take to become a legal logger in Cross River State? I don't know if you can shed some light on that, because I'm trying to keep things balanced here. So on one hand, there's a need to preserve the forest, but on the other hand, I think there's need also for economic benefits. So I think it's about striking that balance. And I remember many years ago going on a tour in London, and I remember distinctly being told that the bones of hippopotamuses and lions were actually found on the site where Trafalgar Square is today. Now, you can Google that. So I think that's verifiable. So a lot of these places that we see as hugely built up cities today were not like this, maybe hundreds of years ago. So if we are to develop, if we are to expand our cities, which I think is equally important for our development, how do we strike that balance? So there's legal logging. How do, are there legal, how does one go about acquiring a license for legal logging in state? Is that something given at the federal level, or is it at the state?
Okay, thank you very much. I don't think as at now we have a very strong need for so much land to expand our cities. We have enough land because the forest that we are talking about as at now is mostly like the forest in Cross River State. It's still forest. I don't know when we will build to get to anywhere up to 20 or 30 kilometers near the national park from our cities. So the pressure is on the forest is not coming because of the quest for land to build cities. The pressure is coming as a land for, as a result of greed to take timber. Now, we can meet our timber needs, our wood needs, by doing a couple of things. Remember, we have always been taking out resources from the forest and not doing enough to replenish it. If you go to cities in London, Oxford, and I've visited them quite often, they have most of the forest there is established. You still have forests inside London. You still have forests in Oxford, in all these places. They are established plantations and what have you. Because the reason is that ecosystem services, like in Sika said, are very vital for our survival. So as we speak, we can still grow the forest trees that we need to meet other developmental needs. But we are not doing that as at now, as a people. Consciously, we are not doing. We need to do that. We need to do that under the, and that's why we have that the current program called UN Ecosystem Restoration Program, 2021 to 2030. So we can still meet those needs by looking providing deliberately growing forests, growing our indigenous tree species to meet our needs. As at now, we need to expand our forest cover so that we'll be able to receive the ecosystem services that we desire, that we require to survive and to carry out sustainable development. So I don't think stopping indiscriminate logging, because that is what is going on there, mostly illegal logging. Fine, within the forest management, there are provisions for salvage logging. Salvage, the certain things that happen, you need to take down some things. It goes to the provisions within the extant laws for that to happen. But that is discarded completely. That's what we're saying. So a lot of illegal logging without the requisite or desired going to the stakeholders like the communities. That's what is happening as of now.
Okay, thanks very much. I can see Mr. David Etum's hand is up. I will just read out a comment by Mr. James Henshaw before I invite David Etum to take the floor. Before we can, Mr. Henshaw says, before we can even start talking about political will or conservation policies and strategies, there's a basic need first for an understanding of the issues. Apart from the few specialists, there's absolutely nothing in society generally about conservation. He says the only hope is for committed activists to continue backing into their loudspeakers, and maybe the people and politicians will wake up. He says this is a long, long and road. God help us. All right. Mr. David Etum, let's come back to you. And I've not forgotten the question about, I wanted to throw to you about your views around how we can, how we can develop a financial model to sustain forests. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Isol. Well, firstly, let me address the question that I wanted to. Well, let me make the comment, then I'll come back to the approach to solutions. Now, Mr. Odinga was talking about the issue of the private sector getting involved, political will to address the issues, and you raised the issue of how do we make this part of the agenda for 2023. Now, I believe that the game of politics is a game where the politicians react. The politicians are reactive people. They react to agendas that have been set. Now, the private sector, the communities, need to set an agenda of sustainable development so that the politicians have no option but to answer the questions of sustainable development in their quest for power, which would then take us to a situation whereby we are able to hold them accountable to their promises. Because in his quest for power, once you set the agenda for him or her, the politician picks that agenda and begins to answer questions towards that agenda to win your confidence towards you giving him your vote. Now, when we set the agenda and include in that agenda sustainable development, okay, the issue we have in forestry, in our forest reserves, is the same issue we have in illegal, unregulated fishing. Illegal, unregulated, unreported fishing. It's the same thing. So what we are suffering on the land, we're also suffering in the water. But all of that is going on because there is no agenda. The global community through the United Nations and all of that, FAO and all of that, are trying to give us a concept of an agenda that says, okay, you know what? this is sustainable development. You need to manage your forests. You need to do this, you need to do that. But we need to own it. We, the owners of the asset, need to own it. And therefore set the agenda. Today, our forests are being bastardized because there is no agenda. Very honestly, there, the last administration, that is the administration before this one, was in the process of developing an agenda. But these things take a cycle of 10 years. And no particular administration, the highest any administration will have is 8. So we as the citizens, the private sector is what I'm talking about, because I'm speaking here as Deputy President of Calabar Chamber of Commerce. The private sector, which does not have a tenure, must own the agenda of sustainable development and set that agenda, and therefore hold the political class, or the politician, not the political class, because we are all in the political class, but hold the politician to delivering on that agenda. And the politician knows that he has 4 years for his first review. And we must keep that pressure on. We must keep that pressure on. We must keep holding them accountable. Today, Nigeria is a major route for pangolin smuggling and ivory. How many elephants do we have in Nigeria? The pangolins that are being smuggled out of here come from Central Africa. That means that Central Africa, I'm talking about the Central African ECAS, which is the Economic Community of Central African States. Okay, so that is from Cameroon all the way to Angola. Okay, including the CAR, Central African Republic. They're all part of Central Africa. Now, all of that is coming through Nigeria because we have made ourselves available. We have made ourselves available. We need, as private sector, to own this thing. We need, as private sector, to be able to articulate. I have my own concept, but my concept is my opinion. But the private sector as a body needs to be able to articulate, and this is a challenge I throw to the Cross River State movement, to be able to galvanize the private sector, to articulate a policy as regards sustainable development holistically. We happen to be talking about the forest reserves today, but we have the same challenge in our aquatic reserves, where there's a maybe even larger degree of vandalization or unregulated exploitation, okay, of our aquatic resources because there isn't an ownership. We need to own these resources as private sector, as the citizens, not as government, because government, unfortunately for us, government is a nebulous entity that nobody owns and so gets very easily abused. But as citizens of Cross River State, as citizens of Nigeria, we need to own our resources. We need to then hold the political class accountable for the preservation and management of those resources. Okay, I mean, we have a super highway today that's going nowhere. 8 years gone.
David, thanks very much. Let me, everything you're saying makes absolute sense, and we'll touch base because I definitely agree with you that work needs to go on behind the scenes to set an agenda and make that agenda visible ahead of 2023. So thanks very much for those comments, but I'm conscious of the fact that we have just about 5 minutes to wrap things up. I think I just have one more question before I would ask panelists to make closing remarks. So Cross River State, I don't know about now, but once upon a time was known for its tourism. Is there any location in Cross River State right now that really sort of marries tourism and the forests and our forest resources together? Is there a place that if someone comes into Cross River State can be recommended to them to visit, to have, even if it's not a world-class experience, but to have a decent experience of that convergence of tourism and forest resources? Chairman Odiga, I think I will ask that question to you, and then maybe also would answer that.
Yes, thank you very much for the question. And I think one area where we've been, one sector, one that I'm familiar that we've been manning for that purpose is the Crossriverians National Park. At a lot of things in place that they have the local gate. We've been privileged, some of us, to take visitors to that side. So I think to farm Emmanuel Dunyan will be quite pleased to respond to that. But as far as I'm concerned, I don't know of any form of tourism going on as I now. That's what I'm referring the thing to Emmanuel, so he can assist us with that information.
Mr. Tuya, you're muted. So okay, you're unmuted now. So carry on.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, so, and I must thank very specially for insight into issues.
You may need to bring the device. You may need to bring the device closer.
Okay. Yeah. I said I must thank all of you for the insight you brought into this discussion, particularly Dr. Digodi. To the last question about locations where visitors can actually go when they come to Cross River State. Of course, we know that the Cross River highest or the largest, biggest tourism asset is its tropical rainforest, and that's being held in custody by the National Park Service. He did mention about the forest. Of course, there is the Aero tourist camp in the urban west section. The urban west sector of the Cross River National Park, about 1 hour away from Calabar. You know, there visitors can have wilderness experience. They can actually sight games, and all manners of experience that are valuable to visitations, particularly when it comes to rainforest tourism. So you have Cross River National Park.
Okay, Mr. Tuya, thanks very much. Okay. Mr. Odiga, please, if you can just give us your closing remarks.
Well, thank you. I can never thank you enough for this initiative. I wish that you say that we continue this conversation. This is the best time for it is now. And as we articulate this, let's extend it to bring most stakeholders into this place. Like, for instance, let's hear the key actors, those who are starting. Let them come into this platform and share what we are talking about. I think it would be quite helpful. It would be stimulating for them to, not just for us to, it's not easy for the ordinary people to set agenda for them. Let them be part of the conversation, that we are equal stakeholders, that they have a mandate. It doesn't mean that they have it all. Let's hear first and foremost. I feel thank you very much for this initiative.
Thank you very much, sir. We appreciate very much this conversation. So, Emmanuel Tuyan, please, your question.
Well, let me also join Odiga to thank you, the host of this program. It's obvious that what you are doing is intended to save our environment and save our state. Let me add that what one of the speakers said, setting agenda, is perhaps what we need to do at this moment. Because, you see, we have so many commissions in Cross River State, and with none of them is a commission to develop the forest-bearing communities. So if we have an agenda set, a governor will know that his government is expected to have to develop the commission, or to have a commission which is the forest-bearing development commission. This way, the communities that are forest-bearing will we'll be able to resist the temptation of illegally exploiting the forest, because some of the activities or some of the economic needs of the forest have been taken up by government. So it is important that politicians are made to be part of this, particularly as we count down to the elections. It is important that we get politicians involved. I subscribe totally to any idea that will bring the politicians, the private sector, and some of these government actors outside politics together for us to set this agenda. It's absolutely necessary. Thank you.
All right, thanks very much, Mr. Tuyang. There's a comment here which I'll read out, which I think is a nice closing comment there. So each TCRM conversation always seems like the best, but I think this one is even better than the previous ones. Please, let's do all we can to get these conversations out and as far and wide as possible. Thanks very much, Claire. On this note, I want to thank everyone who's made out time to be on this conversation this evening. We will definitely work offline, as Mr. David Atom has suggested, and Mr. Odiga also, to set an agenda, not just on the environment and forest conservation, but other areas as well, because it's absolutely critical, like Mr. David Atom emphasized, to set that agenda for the politicians ahead of 2023. So thanks very much for all the contributions to the conversation. So just to say, this is brought to you by the Cross River Movement. If you'd like to find out about the movement, our website is www.crossrivermove.com. So you can go there. We are a community of Crossriverians and lovers of Cross River State. We are not for profit. We are non-partisan, but we are definitely interested in influencing political outcomes. We're non-partisan, but we want better governance and we want the development of Cross River State. So you can follow us on social media, on Facebook at Cross River Move, on Twitter at Cross River Move, and on Instagram at crossriver.move. So our next TCRM conversation comes up on Sunday, the 8th of May, which is in 2 weeks' time. And I'm inviting everyone who's on this conversation to come on, the next one, and invite friends, invite people who can contribute to this, to these conversations. The topic will be announced, and we'll communicate that to you just the same way you heard about this particular conversation. We've got a new initiative coming up, which we're launching on the 1st of May, and it's called Cross River Talks. In fact, I think I'm probably, just give me a moment, let me play a quick video just to introduce that, that initiative. Okay, so that's one to watch out for on the 1st of May, and we'll definitely be sharing information about it, with you, and would love you to come on that as well. And it's talking about the history of Cross River State, I think, as it pertains to creativity. So thanks once again very much, and please, next time, the next conversation, invite someone to come on and let's have a rich conversation on how we can, drive Cross River State forward. Thank you, Emmanuel Tuyang. Thank you, Chairman Odiga, and thanks everyone for attending. God bless you, and enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Have a lovely day.
Yeah.